I don't know if you know this, but Seymour Hersh is full of shit. And uh, Krystal and Saagar are over at Breaking Point. Apparently, this is the Ukraine admits to blowing up Nordstream. Breaking Points. Krystal and Saagar discussed Ukraine admitting to blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, I don't. It's not necessarily that they admit to blowing it up. The idea is that what's floating around, the rumor floating around, is that it was a member of Ukrainian the intelligence community, who is, by the way, in jail right now for acting outside the orders of his superiors. And that guy was one of the people who spearheaded it. But keep in mind, these motherfuckers had on Seymour Hersh, had on a bunch of other people, like including Cenk, talking about how the U.S. did it with the fucking I don't know. We sent the Coast Guard over and blah blah blah. Anyways, this is Ukraine admits to blowing up Nord Stream. Look, I love how they're like, see the hole of the ocean, and the thing of that, and look at the fishies. And then a picture of him just kind of staring out with a flag or whatever. Like, this is one of those things, like, you could just tell they're going for, like, the douche noodle crowd.
Nordstream, a story which has only gotten more interesting.
More interesting in the number of times that we've been wrong about it. And
by the day.
We hate talking about it because, boy, do we have pie on our butt.
Let's go and put this up there on the screen. In a news that will shock absolutely nobody, a Ukrainian military officer, quote, coordinated the Nord Stream pipeline attack. Roman Chernivsky, who is a colonel in the Ukraine Special Operations,
who's in jail right now,
forces, was, quote, integral to the brazen sabotage operation, say people familiar with the planning. Now,
all right. First of all, say people familiar with the planning. The fuck out of here. Now that this fucker's going to jail because he was not following orders and he was going rogue on shit. Whatever.
All of this is one of the...
Well, all of this really points to the fact that Seymour Hersh was making a bong out of his own balls.
Most arcane, bizarre ways that we've finally learned the truth. Because...
yeah, and this is how I find out? You tell me?
Chervinsky is now actually being prosecuted by the Zelensky government. And he is speaking out in, I guess, a face-saving operation to try and to save his own hide by finally telling us the truth.
Again, no. This isn't his admission.
Details, though, themselves, according to both him and many of the other intel officials and others who are familiar with the plan, is that this went, Krystal, all the way up to the very top of the Ukrainian military. It was overseen...
Oh, shit. Crystal ball, folks. Come on now. Oh, shit. Now, let me, real quick. Washington Post, Nord Stream pipeline. Now, this is the article they're talking about. Roman Chervinsky, a colonel in Ukraine Special Forces, was integral to brazen sabotage operations, say people familiar with the planning. Now, I don't know why you'd refer to a dude in third person if he's saying it himself. We'll see. A Ukrainian senior military officer with deep ties to the country's intelligence services, the very ones who are putting him in prison, played a central role in the bombing of the Nord Stream natural gas pipeline last year, according to officials in Ukraine and elsewhere in Europe, as well as other people knowledgeable about the details of the covert operation. Does it say in here that he said it? The officer's role provides the most direct evidence to date tying Ukraine's military and security leadership to a controversial act of sabotage that spawned multiple criminal investigations that U.S. and Western officials have called a dangerous attack on Europe's energy infrastructure. Roman Chervinsky, a decorated 48-year-old colonel who served in Ukraine's special ops, was the coordinator of the Nord Stream operation. People familiar with his role said, managing logistics and support for a six-person team that rented a sailboat under false identities, used deep-sea diving equipment to place explosive charges on the gas pipelines. On September 26th, blah, 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 they attacked, yes, Chervinsky did not act alone. He did not plan the operation. According to people familiar with his role, which has not been previously reported, the officer took orders from more senior Ukrainian officials who ultimately reported to General Valery Zaluzhny, their highest-ranking military officer. They spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive details about the bombing that has strained diplomatic relations with Ukraine and drawn objections from U.S. officials. Fuck off. Ukraine has launched many daring and secretive operations against Russian forces. The Nord Stream attack targeted civilian infrastructure, which was shut at the time. The fuck out of here. Okay, but does it sound like to you that this dickhead is saying that Chervinsky is admitting to it?
Directly by the though themselves, according to both him and many of the other intel officials.
According to who?
The details, though, themselves, according to both him and many of the other intel officials and others who are...
To who?
Themselves, according to both him and many of the other intel officials and others who are familiar with the plan, is that this went, Krystal, all the way up to the very top of the Ukrainian military. It was overseen directly by the head of the Ukrainian armed forces. According to them, and as always, they're like, well, Zelensky had no idea about the operation. But the reason why...
Yeah, no, that's not how... This is, by the way, his characterization of the WAPO article. All right, let's go to here. Through his attorney, Chervinsky denied any role in the sabotage of pipelines. According to him and people... I beg your pardon? According to people like him, from fucking what? Saagar? Do you think people can't read this fucking article? There isn't another one. This is a WAPO exclusive, you shit. Through his attorney, Chervinsky denied any role in the sabotage of... According to him? All speculations about my involvement in the attack on Nordstream are being spread by Russian propaganda without any basis, Chervinsky said in a written statement. According to him... what was that? What was that again, fuckwad?
He had no idea. According to them, and as always, they're like, well, head of top of the Ukrainian military. It was overseen directly up and others who are familiar with the plan. According to both him and many of the other intel officials and others who...
He's only reading this article. Saagar didn't fucking call Chervinsky and get another quote that's different from what WAPO got. The fuck are you talking about? And by the way, the idea that these two douche noodles actually thought that like this is a dunking point after they were all in on the Seymour Hersh story forever, and she's going, all sister. The fuck.
Who are familiar with the plan is that this went, Krystal, all the way up to the very top of the Ukrainian military.
By the way, again, according to him,
it was overseen directly by the head of the Ukrainian armed forces. According to them, and as always, they're like, well, Zelensky had no idea about the operation. But the reason why we should really pay attention here...
Yeah, why?
Is that the details on this show a highly coordinated special operations mission led by the Ukrainians.
On a fucking sailboat with a fucking skeleton crew and a couple of divers.
Blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, where when you start to pair that with the past reporting that we've done here on the show, I believe...
You mean where you've been fucking wrong?
Ryan was in for you at the time, was the level of entanglement between the CIA and the Ukrainians. That story, I now believe, was probably a precursor to releasing the details on this.
What? Yeah, oh yes. That's what Seymour Hersh was just telling you. That story is kind of, he's just teeing you up. He was just priming the pump, baby. Come, Tell him what's up, Krystal.
And it basically...
Basically, we
described how CIA operations in Ukraine, specifically with their special forces, are unprecedented in the way that we have trained them, stood them up, basically running half of their operations for them, paying all of their salary.
For what? Fuck are you talking about? They rented a boat under fake names and went to a section of the pipeline where nobody was around. You think that requires some like crackerjack fucking timing?
We never even did anything like this like we did in Afghanistan or in Iraq.
That's true. We didn't blow up any giant underwater pipelines in Iraq or Afghanistan. Certainly not with the help of Ukrainian divers. I don't know why.
That level of support. Well,
I will. Vic, hey, CSL. Anybody? I don't. He may have already done this or whatever. Is the Jenna Ellis stuff? Oy. Is the Jenna Ellis stuff available? Oh, check the audio clips are allowed. There's no new Jenna Ellis deposition video anywhere on YouTube. If you could send us a link, we can't find it. So help us out, maybe. But we'll get to it.
if you put that then together with this about these Ukrainian special operations forces, it's effectively impossible that the United States did not know. Now,
What? Why? It's impossible the Russians didn't know. What the fuck are you talking about? Krystal, you're missing an
cope from the media and from the people leaking this is
the cope. Motherfucker, you're the one selling that the National Guard did it.
The U.S.
Yeah, keep
intelligence community, quote, learned about it earlier and warned them not to do it.
Mm.
Well, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that that's all smokescreen for. We were actually the ones who directed the operation. But nonetheless, it raises several like crazy things.
Yeah, I have a crazy thing to raise. Can I raise a crazy thing? You fucking tit. How is it that you say the guy said he did it when he said Chervinsky denied any role in the sabotage of the pipelines? All speculations about my involvement in the attack on Nord Stream are being spread by Russian propaganda without any basis, Chervinsky said in a written statement to the Washington Post and Der Spiegel, which conducted a joint investigation of his role. Spokesman for the Ukrainian government did not respond to a list of questions about Chervinsky's participation. Chervinsky's role illustrates the complex dynamics and internal rivalries of the wartime governments in Kiev, where Ukraine's intelligence and military establishment is often in tension with its political leadership. Since Russia's invasion, blah, 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 blah. Can you explain to me? Can you explain to me the whole you said, he said, when he said, fuck you?
You had a lot of speculation that this was actually Russia. Obviously, there were tons of questions. Who can just, unequivocally come out with any evidence? The Biden quote was going...
What the fuck are you talking about? You guys had Hirsch on.
Going around about, Joe Biden says, we're going to make sure that we get rid of the Nord Stream pipeline. It's not going to be a problem. I forget the exact quote of what he said. But there was a plausible, I guess, scenario where this had been some sort of Russian operation. But as more and more details have come out, and as the longer the investigations have come, and basically been abandoned now by the West, and now intel been leaked, we have to grapple with this. Ukraine, at the very least, with U.S. support and possibly at U.S. direction.
No, not at the very least. Zero evidence, fuckwad. You're going about the same WAPO story I just fucking showed. Where are you getting this other than just like dickhead, confirmation bias?
Is responsible for one of the greatest acts of industrial sabotage ever.
Ever. Fantastic. Good for them. Against a warring party that sent rape squads into a... And how dare they deny them the ability to make a living?
A bombing of a multi-billion-dollar pipeline system that also was used directly at the time to try to draw the United States into war. Yep. And these people are our alleged allies. More so, they put our diplomats, or maybe our diplomats were put in this position, again, we don't know who, where they blatantly lied to the American public and to the world about who was responsible for this. Here's a flashback. Let's take a listen.
The United States was not involved in any way, period. The United States...
Right. What in this story goes against
States categorically refutes Russia's unfounded allegations leveled against us. The charges that have been made by Russians are just flat out wrong, plain and simple.
That is the Robert Wood. He was the alternate U.S. ambassador to the United Nations there at the time, responding there. How about...
Right. What about this story changes any of that? I'm dead serious. What about this?
Our alleged involvement in the pipeline. President Biden also denied this from the...
Right. And this story points the other direction.
White House podium and the highest levels of the Ukrainian government. So I don't know. I mean, to grapple with so many terrifying possibilities, that the
Terrifying.
Ukrainians clearly, I mean, we've always known this, they directly want us to draw us into this war.
Yeah.
But this was September 2002. I mean, September of 2022.
Yeah, we were already helping them.
The political conditions at that time were very different. This was an extraordinary event
Oh, yeah.
that happened.
No, it really wasn't.
And it was clearly
The Germans had already shut down Nord Stream 2. They weren't going to use it. They had already made that concession.
they really wanted us to get involved. And again, the only reason we're learning
We were already
the
involved.
truth is because the guy planning the operation is now being persecuted by the Zelensky government. You can almost not make that up.
Yeah. And it's also important to keep in
Why would he be persecuted if it went all the way to the top? Why would they persecute him for doing rogue shit if he was totally sanctioned? Why wouldn't they just keep it on the fucking DL?
mind the context
Also, do you think the CIA, if we're so integrated with their intel services, that we're like, okay, here's what you do. We send this team in. Everybody uses Ukrainian passports, rent this boat, go out there, dive down, blow the fucking thing up. And then when those people return, you should throw one of them to the wolves just for the fuck of it a year from now.
of like why they would want to do this. And it's not only to draw us into that wider war, but it was also to put a lot of pressure on the European populations, basically cut off the possibility
Yeah, of the pipeline that they had already said they're not going to use.
Yes.
that they could benefit from this pipeline. And so, I mean, it really was. Remember all the talk that we
About Seymour Hersh that you guys talked about where you were like, the fucking National Guard did this on a weekend?
heard so much about like attacks on civilian infrastructure and how horrific that was. And
Oh, fuck off. Don't conflate this with goddamn apartment buildings and schools and the energy systems that are functioning at the time. It's a fucking unused pipeline that politically the Germans had already said they weren't going to act on anymore. They weren't using this currently.
how brutal it was and what a war crime, etc.
Yeah, when it's an apartment building, you dipshit. There weren't people living in the fucking pipeline.
Here's a Ukrainian attack on a large piece and critical piece of civilian infrastructure.
Good Lord. That they were able to, they were already in the process of moving where the supply came from, and they never missed a fucking beat.
And we're just now learning, you know, more than a year later, what really sort of we're learning.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine these two fuckheads getting upset about Bucha? I'm serious. Like this, I can't, I doubt if we comb through their shit that we would find this much like pearl clutching and gasping about the discovery of like the sexual assaults and the violence and the mutilations and all that kind of shit at Bucha. And they're like, I think it's, we shouldn't have, Russia had a big scary scare that NATO was going to come at them like 8 years ago. Somebody mentioned it. So you can't blame them for sending rape squads into a city and that they bombed for no fucking reason. But I mean, it's not like it's a pipeline that no one's using currently. Get the fuck out of here.
What really happened here. And remember also the way that this all unfolded. First, they were very strongly suggesting, and the media basically ran with the assumption that, it was Russia.
Yes.
Russia does terrible things. They did this thing. They blew.
Yeah, because they have the sensors and they have the video of the pipeline and they're not releasing it. Arguably, by the way, the dude that you're talking about who says he agreed that Saagar was bullshitting, that he said he was part of this, said this is Russian disinformation. He himself, the guy who's going to jail for other shit that you say is being persecuted, he's saying, I didn't do this. This is Russian disinformation.
Up their own pipeline for reasons we don't really understand why.
Decompression, lack of facility personnel to take the natural gas that was out of it and have this giant pressurized pipe that isn't going into Germany that they've already shut off on their end, that if it comes back the other way, kabooey, it's easier to just blow a hole in it in the middle, and also you can use it as pressure.
But they did it. It's definitely them. But we're not.
Also, this is, by the way, can I just say for the record, this is a single source WAPO story. I mean, they have multiple sources in it, but for them, it's one story from WAPO that they're running for. And there's people involved in Europe and other places that are speaking on condition of anonymity right? That's the idea. He's being held in Kiev jail on charges that he abused his power stemming from a plot to lure a Russian pilot to defect in Ukraine in July 2022. Authorities allege that Chervinsky, who was arrested in April, acted without permission and the operation gave away coordinates of a Ukrainian airfield, prompting a Russian rocket attack that killed a soldier and injured 17 others. That's why he was arrested. Newsick, who is no longer serving in the Special Operations Forces, said publicly that the operation was approved by the armed forces and he declined to comment for this article. Chervinsky has said he was not responsible for the Russian attack, and that in trying to persuade the pilot to fly to Ukraine and hand over his aircraft, he was acting under orders. He calls his arrest persecution, political retribution for his criticism of Zelensky and his administration. Chervinsky said publicly that he suspects Andriy Yermak, one of Zelensky's advisors, of spying for Russia. He's also accused Zelensky of administration of failing to sufficiently prepare the country for Russia's invasion. Yeah, it's a pissing contest between them. But at no point, by the way, does he admit to it by any stretch. Yeah, he did not plan the operation according to people familiar with his role, which has not been reported. The officer took orders from more senior officials, according to people who knew about the thing. Said people familiar with how the operation was carried out. Like fucking who? And again, how do you verify that? This is like, 3 sources deep on this shit.
Not going to offer any evidence. And then it was like, and we don't really want to do an investigation either. This became increasingly untenable. And so then you had these suggestions of like, well, it might have been some Ukrainian partisans, but they definitely didn't have any connection. Zelensky had no idea. It was the Ukrainian Rotary Club. Remember, we were joking about out there. They were freelancing and he had no knowledge whatsoever. Now we get to, and the way that this was framed also in this article, I thought was very interesting because the headline is about this Ukrainian military officer coordinated the Nordstream pipeline attack. But really the headline here is that...
Hold on. Yeah, this is the same article. Just to clarify, just to make sure we're reading the exact same thing.
It was the top dude, the highest ranking military officer in Ukraine, who they're saying was in charge of the operation. So it went all the way up the chain as far as it could, but they go on to, but Zelensky still had no idea, which, as you pointed out, Saagar, either way is a terrifying possibility.
Yes.
So if you really...
No, it's not terrifying. It's a fucking pipeline that the Germans were not going to use anymore. It is functionally useless. They're getting all their natural gas now that they are missing from the Nord Stream from Norway and Qatar. The fuck?
Have these people who are completely separate from Zelensky, freelancing, carrying out...
No. Like, even if you believe it went all the way up to the top to Zelensky, what you have is need-to-know operations. And overall strategic discernment by, let's say, Zelensky, saying to the intel chiefs and was effectively their version of the CIA, look, there's a limit on what I'll allow you to do, but within those parameters, knock yourself the fuck out, because this is war and they're trying to kill us all. And at the process, when this thing was planned, if even they did it, and again, this is just sourcing from the Washington Post, who's like, people who know people who trust BDO know that they did this, even though the guy involved is saying, I didn't fucking do this and it's Russian disinformation. Let's just take it as written. Of course there's a situation where there's a direct, if he wants to know, he can know, but he doesn't have to. And he can give the intel services, wide berth to affect, non-human casualty attacks on Russia around Europe, where they're trying to build stuff, wherever they have permission or wherever they can go that doesn't violate somebody's territorial waters or territorial land.
One of the most dramatic, episodes of industrial sabotage in world history. They're just...
Yeah, I know. I'm pearl clutching like a motherfucker.
Over their freelancing, and he has no control over them. That's terrifying. And the possibility that he was directly involved and behind it, and that, by the way, we were as well, is also quite something.
No, it isn't. It's not at all. It was a dead pipeline.
So it is, this is a bombshell, astonishing report. And I also don't think it's an accident that comes so long after the fact when people have moved on and obviously...
Yes, it's so shocking and amazing and pivotal, and the world shook that day and will never be the same. And now they've waited until it's boring to maybe figure out what sort of might have happened, but we're not sure. Meanwhile, the Washington Post is basically picking at a scab with this story, and it's so fucking vague. I hope they fill in the gaps on this. But I don't think they will.
The attention is very much distracted right now by what's going on in Israel.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, look.
Yeah, so WAPO's got that's part of their, trying to get around and do the thing with the bamboo. That's sneaky. Nobody sees us coming. We're doing our thing. Like while they look over there at the thing, the pretty fiery burning thing with the sad and all that kind of stuff, and pow. What about this? Oh, that's a story you want to forget? Let me talk about it now. Poof. Yeah, that's the same shit.
It's convenient for them to forget, but it's one of those where we cannot forget, especially.
Yeah, I know. It keeps Saagar up at night.
Especially because we're watching in real time, as everybody just like forgets that Ukraine ever happened, about all these brain dead takes that I'd ever seen at the time, like, oh, the fate of democracy is at stake in Ukraine. Now they're like, well, maybe we'll have a peace deal. And it's like, oh, so is it
No, they're not. Fuck are you talking about? Marjorie Taylor Greene and that crowd don't count. Fuck. Since when, motherfucker?
real politic, or is it not? Because which one? Those are totally.
Yeah, I totally don't understand. Like, I was watching one channel and they said one thing, and then I went to the other channel that says the opposite of whatever that channel says, and they were saying like the opposite of what that channel said. So even what?
Incongruent. There's no actual, there's no overlap between those. So overwhelmingly, we are also watching the Ukrainian state, a month now starved of its blank check from America, basically disintegrating. You have the top military commander,
You wish.
who apparently was behind Nordstream, who's like, it's a stalemate. It's a technological problem. As things are right now, nobody's going to win. Then you have Zelensky coming out literally begging for money, being like, listen, if you
Yeah, his people are being killed, fuckhead.
you can't give us a check, like, just, we'll pay you
We'll
back.
take a loan,
It's like,
we're here for it.
You pay us back with what, you know?
The industrial base of Ukraine, because it's actually potentially stronger than Germany's.
What exactly do you make again?
What exactly do you... Yeah, again, the fact that this motherfucker knows nothing of the industries that already exist in Ukraine is very telling. 2 fucking years in. Just like... Their chemical and minerals, their grains, the fucking breadbasket of Europe, for fuck's sake, and partially responsible for why sections of Africa don't starve to death. That's just Ukraine. Plus their science and tech and internet and security stuff go beyond even their military function. Just normal nerd shit. There's a ton of it.
Nothing? Oh, that's right. And especially now you would lose 20% of your country. How exactly is that going to work? You can't even pay your own government salary. So it's one of those where...
They're in a war, you tit.
He's in desperate straits. He refuses to abandon it.
Why won't he abandon his people? It's
People
weird.
in his team are admitting straight up corruption. Now he's his own political opponents.
Yeah, I don't even know this, and now there's like an article in the Washington Post that makes me look like an asshole for believing Seymour Hersh's shit, and then I don't even know what it, yeah.
Are running against him. He's canceling elections. You have all of this consternation with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and all that that's now being scrutinized by America. I mean, it's a chaotic situation, which
It's a war.
let's be clear, it's actually been like that from the beginning. It's only now that you're allowed to talk about it.
Bullshit.
Right.
And in that, we are again
Right.
grappling with the fact that our supposed closest ally and all of that committed an insane act of industrial sabotage, dare I say even international terrorism.
Yes, that's fucking stupid. International terrorism. One story, Washington Post, dude who denies it, by the way, who I guess is just guilty, fuck him, according to Saagar. Just because WAPO wrote a story and they got some anonymous sources that are saying this. This won't be another Seymour Hersh. This won't be another one of those series of bullshit stories. Nah, this guy's fucking guilty, and he was made to do it, and he was happy that he was made to do something he didn't want to do.
That would have had the biggest, like they wanted.
Oh my God, this is fucking dumb. Whoops, hold on. I scrolled back too far. Sorry.
Over and over again.
The last thing I want to say about this is, I mean, we really are watching the utter destruction of even a semblance of commitment to the quote unquote international rules-based order. Like,
what?
This is collapsed completely in real time. And
what? Wait a minute. Hold on. So a country that's being attacked by a much larger force. It is alleged that they blew up a pipeline that led to 0 fucking deaths. And all of the material sourced through that pipeline found other sources quickly. No one was even inconvenienced because it was a combination of we got natural gas and liquefied natural gas from multiple other places, and it was a mild winter, and this one's probably going to be just as mild. And this idiot and her buddy are like, this so breaks the rules, guys. Guys, this is so not the rules.
Think about, just do a little intellectual exercise.
Okay, let's do it.
If it was Russia that they could prove bombed the Nord Stream pipeline, think about how different they talk about it. If it was Hamas who managed to pull off such an act of international terror and industrial sabotage.
What are you talking about? Where the fuck do you think the missiles from Hamas come from, you dumbass? They pull up pipes out of the ground. They use the piping that Israel put there for them to get water. They pull those up out of the ground and make rockets out of them, you shithead. They do it all the time.
Think about the different way that they would talk about it.
Yeah, if it was like, if you could prove that like a group of people with no functioning military who wear sweatpants instead of a fucking uniform and wear civilian clothes and operate amongst civilians, who don't even have fucking, they've got paragliders and rowboats. Imagine if they blew up the Nord Stream. What if they built the fucking Gilligan's Island versions of 747s? What if they were behind 9/11? Get the shit. What?
And so when you have the Russia war on Ukraine unfolding at the same time as
just unfolding,
the Israel war on Gaza.
Is it the Israel war on Gaza? Is that how this started, dum-dum? This all just started as Israel's war on Gaza. They just fucking picked up one day and were like, today's the day.
And you see so clearly that these rules are not rules. They're just applied selectively, weaponized against the countries that we don't happen to like.
I see. And so why the fuck wasn't Israel just carpet bombing northern Gaza and telling everybody to get the fuck out before October 7th then? Why? I don't understand. Why didn't Ukraine kill 312,000 Russian soldiers before the invasion? I mean, if the rules-based order doesn't exist, or it's collapsed, or it was going to collapse anyways, why did we even hold back before?
And it's so brazen.
Yeah, it's so brazen. It is brazen. Guys, it's just brazen. It is brazen.
And it's so out in the open.
Yeah, it's so brazen and out in the open. You can tell by how many fucking conflicting stories about it that don't really add up. And Saagar just talked for an hour about how he's got to come up with this fucking QAnon level conspiracy theory to explain the gaps in his fucking understanding of a very normal thing during wartime. And at the same time, both of us want you to think that the blowing up of the Nord Stream fucking pipeline that involved, again, is 0 human deaths, period, end of story, is equal to like us fucking nuking the Three Gorges Dam in China and drowning thousands of people or some shit.
I mean, this is the end of even being able to pretend that.
Yeah, not even pretending anymore, you guys. I'm not even gonna.
This country actually cares about such things. I just don't know how you even say it with a straight face.
I don't even know what the fuck you're saying.
Going forward.
Okay, going forward. At least we're talking about it going forward. Obviously, now I'm allowed to, but going forward. How far forward? Maybe 3 months? 3 months from now, I won't be able to say it with a straight face.
And I really do think, I mean, you know.
Do you? I'm questioning that. Oh, you mean you were going to go further with that sentence? I thought that was the end of the statement.
There's been lots of things you could point to, but in the modern era, it really started.
Totally. And you could point to, I mean, left, right, center, middle, up, down, A, B. There's lots you could point to. You go, which is effectively what Saagar was just doing for that. Saagar's entire intro was, but what, that's the whole fucking, that's my reenactment of the entire fucking thing. Good Lord.
Starts to come unglued with the Iraq war and the bullshit pretext we used to go in. And
yes, real quick, Um, uh, right now, I participated, as did a lot of people in my chat room, with the protests against the Iraq War. Not only to end it, but also how it was being executed, even if we couldn't bring it to a close. And that definitely did affect things. It affected we got to change leadership. We eventually phased it out. Iraq, you don't really hear about it anymore, largely because of that, because had we kept the sort of Dick Cheney methodology, it would still be a hellhole, and now it's in better shape. So much so that the QAnon fuckers think that the Iraqi dinar is their biggest life investment from now on. But in being able to actually protest it, how is my life different, Krystal? Just an explanation. Being able to protest against it than, say, Russians who don't think Russia should go into Ukraine, or Palestinians who don't think Hamas should have attacked Israel on October 7th. What are their lives like versus like what we're able to do? Are they able to change their leadership and and stop that shit? Are they able to affect new leadership to the point where it is a defining characteristic of modern presidents that they don't start any new wars? That boots on the ground is not a good thing like it was in the fucking 80s?
You know, it's no accident.
No, it isn't.
That Putin pointed to the Iraq War and what we did there as his excuse for why it's okay for him to do what he does.
Sorry. So, the Iraq War gave Vladimir Putin the excuse to send the Wagner Group into Somalia and cut open the bellies of pregnant women. And if it hadn't been for all that yellow cake nonsense, he would never have done that.
Netanyahu uses the Iraq War and the toll that took on civilians as his excuse to do what he's doing in Gaza. And Saagar.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't need an excuse. It's right fucking there. The weird thing, again, I talked about this earlier, but 9/11, calling this even like, I mean, you could say that Russia's invasion is Ukraine's 9/11. There was no 9/11 impetus for Russia doing what they did. They just decided to fucking do it. But if you're going to say that the Hamas attack on October 7th was Israel's 9/11, it's a huge difference between George Bush and his ilk deciding to attack Iraq, which is not fucking next door. It's not Mexico. We're not in fear of them being right there. Fucking Gaza, as far as Israel is right fucking there. They're driving distance to Tel Aviv. There are no vehicles that you can drive from fucking the Middle East anywhere, certainly not from Saudi Arabia or the fucking hills of Afghanistan or Pakistan where the Taliban hung out, or the Mujahideen or the Yusufzad or any of the people that Osama bin Laden was working with. They weren't going to be able to drive here, fucker. The Hamas could. There are no paragliders that reach the United States from over there. There were systems we could put in place that did not require us attacking another country. The lesson learned from 9/11 in terms of Iraq is not impossible to learn if you're Netanyahu, because they're right fucking there. Good Lord.
I think you're absolutely right that while look, I'm not going to deny there were horrors that we committed during the Iraq War, the number of civilians killed and the torture and Abu.
Yeah. Tell me about those. I always get thirsty when you talk about those civilian casualties.
Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay, like, it really does pale in comparison to what is unfolding in Gaza right now. But
what? So you're just going to say that basically the 1,400 people, because again, Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib, I'll give you horrible situations. I would argue Guantanamo worse, Abu Ghraib terrible, Guantanamo worse in this ballot. But you're talking about, let's say, person to person. You want to talk about proportionality? Involved in both of those places, less than 140 people, max, at both of those sites over the entirety of the Iraq War. And you're not going to bring up what Hamas did to 1,400 fucking innocent civilians during their attack on October 7th and just roll past that. Just pretend it never happened. This is the war equivalent of pretending COVID didn't affect us economically. This is so fucking gross. Also, can I just say, can we look at the titles of these stories that they have coming up? This is the middle of their show. This is getting them over the hump. Israel, Gaza, Nordstream, Eric Adams, Realtor, and Brothel. Way to anchor the show, kids. That's the way you know you keep it exciting till the very end. Fuck, this is awful. People watch this shit?
We started this unraveling in the modern era with.
The fuck are you talking about? We did? Are you out of your fucking mind? There's been an overlapping blowback since World War II as a restructuring of the world order kept rewriting itself. And some dumbass decided that somebody else should have the nuclear bomb besides the United States, and it should be Soviet Russia, not fucking the UK or somebody else, or somebody that we have a reasonable disagreement with, but our arch fucking enemy should have the nuclear weapon. And what did they do? They used it as an umbrella to try and wipe out everybody in fucking Afghanistan, and they lost 15,000 of their own people over the course of 10 years doing it. And us helping those people created the power structure that Osama bin Laden later would attack us on 9/11 because he didn't like us there. But without us being there, the Russians would have had his head on a fucking platter. It's so goddamn weird. It's like the funny part is, and I mean funny by grotesque, that she will skip right past October 7th, but then like round off this 9/11, our reaction to 9/11 started this. Like, she'll just blow off 9/11 entirely instead of going, matters who you elect, and it matters how they react. Because I would argue, I voted for Al Gore, and if he'd have been in charge, I question whether 9/11 would have even fucking happened, because he would have read his fucking presidential daily briefs, and they would have been concerned about this, and they might have spotted it before it happened. It never would have come off. This would have been a story we heard about because they busted a bunch of guys who were trying to learn how to fly planes but never how to land them, right? But George Bush was like, I gotta read my goat upside down. And then all this shit happens, and then he's the guy, I'm the decider, making the decision to go into fucking Iraq because they had this idea like, while we're at it, why don't we just fucking wipe this shit out?
The Iraq War. And now we've just seen a complete dissolution of, like I said, even the ability to have a pretext of commitment to these supposed higher values. And,
What are you talking about? Why are we, then why are we bothering with humanitarian pauses, a corridor? Why are we getting humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in the first place? Why are we at the Rafah crossing? Why are we supplying military or non-military aid there? If that's true, if there's no even pretext, then why are we even bothering with this shit? It's just because apparently, according to you, the American people don't give a rat fuck. Right? Why bother? Which is where apparently the American people in general, according to these two dipshits, are just like, bomb the whole fucking place back to glass so Jesus can come back and go ice skating. Good Lord.
it's an extraordinary and horrifying thing to watch.
Fuck, man. They must have here's what I think. You want to know, honestly? I think there's a timer in front of their fucking desk, and they go through these little segments because they're trying to keep the show tight so they can cut segments like this. And they got a hard 12 minutes or whatever the fuck on each segment, or 10 minutes, and they sometimes go over. And she's just talking to the end of it. We see this with Glenn Beck all the fucking time.
In real time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to break.
No, it was terrible. It was ass. That is some of the most ignorant, blathering bullshit that I've ever seen not coming out of Glenn Beck's mouth. God damn, what a waste of time. And all this is like Saagar just like jerking himself off about his hatred of Ukraine, because I guess the Hills funding for their old show come through RT or some like co-pro, and now they don't have that money anymore and they gotta fucking scramble for it. Good Lord. 1 million subscribers, 36,000 views. I mean, I don't have 36,000 views on my shit, but I only got almost 59,000 subscribers. I'm just saying, percentage wise, it just looks like I have a lot more real people watching and participating in my shit as opposed to this 1 million fucking puffery. Ugh. Good Lord.